Long before we saw the transformative performance of Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, and before the divisive cameo from John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange 2, there was a team of heroes that followed the success of movies like X-Men and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. A team that was inspired from the pages of Marvel's first supergroup. A team, a family that has never met its true potential in live action. Hey there, true believers. As Marvel's getting closer to finally figuring out what to do with their oldest super team, we at Joblo are continuing to revisit movies from before the MCU and dissect them like the cinematic lab rats that they are. Today, we're being treated to the campy and completely bonkers film that stormed theaters in 2005. Get it? Stormed theaters? Fantastic Four is a film that takes a family from being a group of dysfunctional scientists to being a well-oiled machine that comes together to defeat one of Marvel Comics' biggest threats. But was Fantastic Four really that fantastic?
Is that a trick question?
Find out in today's episode of Marvel Revisited. 2005's Fantastic Four was directed by Tim Story of Barbershop fame and follows the origins of Reed Richards, Sue and Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm as they discover the nature of their newfound superpowers after an accident in space leaves them stretchy, flaming, invisible, and whatever this is.
Don't do drugs.
But when the team discovers the nefarious motives of their friend and benefactor, Dr. Victor Von Doom, they must find a way to hone their abilities and use them to take down Doom and save each other from impending destruction. Now, of course, this was not the first time we'd see this family in live action. This is actually the team's second outing after the highly memed and ever sought after Fantastic Four film that Hollywood tried to destroy in 1994. But seeing as that film is considered unreleased, despite being available in its original unfinished form online, this 2005 installment serves as the technical first theatrical run. Based on the comic book series of the same name, Fantastic Four was originally created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in 1961. They are recognized as Marvel Comics' first supergroup and have remained a staple in the Marvel legacy ever since. Which begs the question, why hasn't Fantastic Four been as successful on the big screen as it has been on the page? Well, one thing is for sure, 20th Century Studios expected this movie to be a hit.
It's clobbering time!
It's catchy, right?
With a budget of $100 million, it's clear that this film was meant to carry the same level of fandom as Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, and given the movie's box office performance of $333 million, it seemed that this level of success was imminent. However, the movie's critical response tells a different story. More on that in just a bit, but for now, let's hit play on 2005's Fantastic Four. Oh, but you know what would also be fantastic? Liking this video and subscribing to Joblo for the absolute best in movie content. Let's go. Fantastic Four wastes no time in getting to the superpowered shenanigans. The movie quickly establishes Reed Richards, played by Johan Griffith, and Ben Grimm, played by Michael Chiklis, as they're shopping their idea for a trip to space around town to anybody who can write them a check. The pair find themselves pitching their idea to Victor Von Doom, a previous classmate and collaborator of theirs, played by Julian McMahon, and Sue Storm, played by Jessica Alba, previously a girlfriend of Reed's. Once Victor agrees to fund their voyage for Reed's research, the team gets rounded out by the introduction of Johnny Storm, played by Chris Evans. He's Sue's little brother and a male model / spoiled playboy. Completely the opposite of Chris Evans' run as Captain America in the MCU, I'll tell you that much.
I can do this all day.
The casting for Reed, Ben, and Victor feels very true to the comics, and despite this movie catching a lot of well-deserved shade, I must admit that these three characters feel very much like the comic book characters that they're based on. In fact, it's been rumored and since confirmed that the original choices for the cast were vastly different than the lineup that we ended up getting. Originally, Alexis Denisof from Buffy the Vampire Slayer was set to play Reed and would be joined by the likes of Paul Walker as Johnny, John C. Reilly as Ben, and Charlize Theron and Jude Law as Sue and Victor respectively. While the original casting choice was certainly not lacking any star power, I'm actually pretty content with the casting that we ended up getting. Within the first 15 minutes of this movie, the team, now accompanied by Victor, is already on board a spaceship and heading into the eye of a meteor storm when a miscalculation from Reed leaves each of them vulnerable to the storm and imbued with superpowers. Interestingly, upon rewatching this movie, it's pretty clear that the powers given to the Fantastic Four and Doom are a reflection of their individual character traits. Hear me out. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, is always stretching himself too thin in the name of his work and aiming for the highest possible outcome, so the storm gave him the ability to physically stretch his skin.
That's gross.
Sue Storm, or the Invisible Girl, feels unseen and unheard by Reed, thus being given the gift of physical invisibility as well as the ability to generate a force field to protect herself, which speaks to her guarded facade. Johnny Storm, or the Human Torch, is a hotshot with an affinity for going fast and taking it to the edge. So what can he do? Literally get hot and fly.
Oh, you're hot.
Why, thank you, so are you. And I'm not afraid to cry.
Now, Ben is the rock of the team, so he's turned into a mound of orange rock that is nearly unbreakable as the Thing.
It's clobbering time.
Then we have Victor Von Doom, or Dr. Doom, and he's vain and obsessed with his physical appearance as well as being endlessly hungry for power and control. So what does the storm do to him? He becomes physically mangled and disfigured while also having the ability to absorb actual power from electricity. This is a pretty cool little way to infuse each character's ability with the standout pieces of their personality. I dig it. After waking up from a storm-induced nap, the team begins noticing different symptoms presenting themselves, which kicks off the real adventure of this movie. Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny are now navigating life in Reed's home laboratory in the iconic Baxter building while they try to understand their powers and reverse them. See, one of the main conflicts of this movie is the tragic impact that the storm has on Ben. While the other members of the crew are left able to turn their powers on and off, Ben is stuck as a hideous orange rock monster and cannot revert back to his original form.
Hey! You think you got problems? You take a good look, pal.
This causes Ben's completely shallow fiancée Debbie to leave him, while everybody else in the city seems to be afraid of him. Now, while Reed and friends work on a so-called cure for their powers, Victor is feasting on that power and taking revenge on the businessmen who forced him out of his company after his public image was dragged through the mud following the accident in space, which was funded by his company. In a way, there's really two stories happening here. There's the story of the Fantastic Four trying to figure out their new dynamic and responsibilities as superheroes, and then there's Victor's story, which tracks a power-hungry man's eventual slip into madness. You could see where this movie's going from a mile away. While directing, Tim Story would often reference material from the Fantastic Four comic books, as it said that he was a huge fan. And this movie is littered with Easter eggs and small nods that only the truest of true believers would catch. Notably, a tweet from a fan years later pointed out a magazine seen in the film that draws attention to the casting of James Marsden and Rebecca Romijn as Cyclops and Mystique, something that fans would actually witness in the following year's X-Men: The Last Stand.
Grow up.
Come on. I'm the only guy who thinks this is cool.
Now, in terms of comic book accuracy, this movie does do a great job of capturing things like Reed's awkward approach to his relationship with Sue, as well as Johnny's lack of personal responsibility and larger-than-life persona. Although I must say, the movie also definitely fits into that idea that Marvel has always done way too much legwork to explain the most mundane details. For example, this movie gives Reed his iconic gray temples as part of his mutation. Why? You could just have him have gray hair on the side. I don't think anybody would care.
Nice too. I'm liking the grandpa look.
Once the team has figured out how to use their powers correctly, we see Johnny behave like a spoiled rich kid whose powers are only adding to his ego, while Reed and Sue use them sparingly and only when it's considered safe, and Ben is not so patiently waiting for Reed to build a machine which promises a cure. We get two different montages that show the team using their powers for various tests, as well as using them in their common everyday life. The montages are definitely fun, and it is charming to see our actors interacting with each other's powers in a light and comedic way.
Johnny!
But things do eventually get serious, however, once Victor learns how to channel his power and begins exacting his plan to kill the Fantastic Four. See, Victor believes that the storm turned them from ordinary people into gods, and he would rather kill his cohorts than sacrifice his quest for the ultimate power. This is classic Dr. Doom shit for sure, but in this movie it's a little bit undercooked for my taste. Ben breaks away from the team for a while and is treated like a monster by some and a hero by others. When Ben goes to a bar that he used to frequent, he's introduced to Alicia, an empathetic blind woman who doesn't have any fear of Ben's physical appearance. Look, blind or not, I'm happy somebody is finally giving our boy some love.
You know, being different isn't always a bad thing.
She takes an immediate interest in Ben too, and in fact this woman moves fast as she puts the moves on Ben pretty much right away despite him being a complete stranger to her. Victor is surveilling the team in order to make sure that Reed doesn't find a cure, and he begins trying to pick off the team one by one. There is some ridiculous dialogue in this section of the movie where Victor explains his entire plot out loud while watching the surveillance footage alone in his office. It took me directly out of the movie a couple of times, and it just doesn't make any sense for this dude to be breaking down his plot to destroy our heroes to an audience of none. Victor uses his natural powers of manipulation to convince Ben that Reed isn't interested in curing them, and then uses his actual powers to revert Ben back into his less powerful human form. This of course temporarily wins Ben over. Doom then attempts to neutralize and destroy the remaining 3 members of the team with things like heat-seeking missiles, flash freezing, and of course blunt force. When Ben realizes what Victor is trying to do, he turns himself back into the Thing and shows up to assist his family. I actually enjoyed this portion of the film just before the final conflict. It shows the acceptance and sacrifice that Ben is willing to make in order to save his friends. This reinforces the single most important theme for any piece of Fantastic Four media. They are a family. So the group works together to defeat Doom by using a blend of their superpowers and also their own mental prowess, as they're able to subdue Dr. Doom using simple science.
Man, I love this job.
Job, huh?
Seeing that this movie was released on the heels of Daredevil and X2, you'd be forgiven for expecting a darker and grittier story, but I personally liked seeing a superhero film that had a campier and more lighthearted tale, and it felt more like a comic book and less like a soap opera. Although comic book fans, movie fans, and critics alike were ultimately underwhelmed by this family-friendly big screen outing, as the movie was widely panned upon its release in the summer of '05.
Perfect.
The movie did leave itself open for a sequel, of course, by showing Dr. Doom in captivity being transported back to his hometown of Latveria while the Fantastic Four celebrates their success as New York's newest superpowered scientist. Ben finds some love in the form of Alicia, Sue and Reed get engaged, and Johnny, well, you know Johnny.
I need names and shots. Bartender!
Fantastic Four opened up on July 8th, 2005 and quickly earned the top spot at the box office with its opening weekend pull of $56.1 million in the first weekend. Despite making more than enough money to suggest that this film was a hit, audiences were not as impressed. The movie was widely negatively received and currently holds a Rotten Tomatoes score of 28%, if you're into that sort of thing, and the critical response was also very lackluster, with some calling it bland with subpar acting.
I think we have a serious problem.
Hollywood didn't seem to care, as they greenlit the sequel, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, and they were able to get the same cast attached to reprise their roles. Now that movie is an even bigger departure from the source material and an even less impressive installment in the strange and mostly forgotten saga, but I'm sure we'll talk all about that soon enough.
That's terrible news.
Personally, I can agree that the movie doesn't have the same level of finesse that we would expect from such a beloved IP with so much rich source material, but I also think that this movie is the closest thing we've gotten to a suitable Fantastic Four film in live action. Whether you're holding out for a John Krasinski-led MCU outing, or you're like me and you're just looking for anything to latch onto, it's safe to say that we've got some high expectations for Kevin Feige and the MCU to deliver us something special. And while we wait for that, we've got plenty of movies in the pre-MCU time capsule to dig up, rediscover, and fall in or out of love with. In the meantime, go ahead and tell us your thoughts in the comments down below, and also don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share with a friend who likes this sort of content. I'm gonna go dye my temples gray and try on a blue spandex supersuit, so we'll see you next time on Marvel Revisited. Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the store tab on any of our Joblo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some. To start us off with an attention-grabbing hot take that is sure to get some of you going in the comments, John Krasinski should not play Reed Richards in the MCU. Okay, now tell me why you disagree in the comments, but be quick about it because today's episode is going to be full of black sheep opinions as we dive back into the pre-MCU Marvel catalog and see what movies are worth revisiting and which ones we can leave dead and buried. And today, true believers, we are going to take a critical retrospective look at the film that is considered to be a mostly disappointing sequel, but has also garnered some level of respect from comic book lovers since its release in 2007.
Which is really pathetic when you think about it.
That's right, folks. Today we are going to watch Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer. Directed by Tim Story and of course starring a pre-Captain America Chris Evans as well as Johan Griffith, Jessica Alba, Michael Chiklis, and Julian McMahon. And while some of you may still be heated about my opening statement, I assure you, this movie has nothing to do with that opinion. Or does it?
See, this proves exactly what I've been saying all along.
No, it really doesn't, but as always, the only thing that matters today is whether or not this movie holds up all these years later. And that, true believers, is what we are going to find out in today's episode of Marvel Revisited. You know what, I was not looking forward to watching this movie again, as last time I saw it, I wanted to make like Dr. Doom and lock myself in a giant shipping crate and be hidden away for the foreseeable future. But I may have changed my opinion on that after this most recent rewatch.
Look, don't tell Johnny.
Don't tell Johnny what?
When the movie picks up, it quickly gets into the main storyline and doesn't waste any time catching us up with the Fantastic Four. Reed and Sue are getting married, and as usual, Reed seems more interested in his research than his relationship.
Yeah, Sue says I'm addicted to it.
I wonder why she'd say that.
Johnny and Ben are growing closer, but still holding on to that friendly rivalry that fans of the comics would hope for. The movie also cuts in some very effective establishing scenes of an incoming threat to planet Earth that we will soon come to know as the Silver Surfer. And also there's some threads for the return of Dr. Doom, who we know survived the last encounter with the squad. Now, personally, I think this is one of those rare occasions where the sequel is actually better than the original, and a big part of that is due to the core team's dynamic. When I consume any form of Fantastic Four media, there's a few non-negotiable items that I need to see included. One of those things is Reed Richards, who, despite his good intentions, is constantly placing his super family in the back seat while his love for the work rides in shotgun. But the other thing is seeing the rest of the team acting like a family.
What about having a normal life, a family?
Who says you have to be normal to have a family?
See, in the first film, I enjoyed the characters and the dynamic of the team overall, but in this movie, each character feels like a naturally evolved version of themselves, and I must admit, it works for me. Johnny and Ben feel like they've been living together for years because in this movie, they have. Anyone who's ever had a roommate for more than a couple years knows that while you may get on each other's nerves from time to time, you inevitably will grow closer to that person and maybe even care for them more than you did before.
You and me are gonna be spending a whole lot of time together, pal.
It's not just an annoying little brother trope played up for the sequel. It's complicated and plays the good with the bad, and it's great.
Well, you got me, pal.
Now, Reed and Sue's wedding day is finally approaching, and Reed has promised Sue that he would take a break from work and focus on the wedding. But we all know Reed.
We have to get through this quickly.
Oh, that's romantic.
Should I continue? Yes, please.
It's actually a good thing that he kept one eye on the work, because when the incoming alien threat makes its way to Earth in the form of Silver Surfer, voiced here by Lawrence Fishburne, Reed is prepared and the team springs into action. The wedding gets pretty badly ruined though, and that's, sad.
But once we are married, everything will be back to normal.
We will never have normal lives as long as we do what we do.
Now, I'm really curious, for those of you that have seen this movie recently, what did you think about the Silver Surfer here? I honestly can say that I think Tim Story really understood the character. Every element from his chrome and comic accurate appearance to Lawrence Fishburne's deep and monotone voice acting to the way they introduce him is just perfect.
Oh, that is cool.
For those of you that don't know, the Silver Surfer was first introduced in the Fantastic Four issue number 48 in the year 1966 and was created by comics legend Jack Kirby. His real name is Norrin Radd, and rad he is. I'm not kidding, they could do this exact same thing in today's MCU and it would work for me just as well.
All that you know is at an end.
What do you mean by that?
The Silver Surfer's goal is simple. He's traveling through time and space using his board to send a signal to Galactus, who will then locate and eat the planet and everyone in it in order to survive. And why would the Silver Surfer do something like that? Well, we'll get into it. The first half of the movie is very entertaining, and I don't have a lot of criticism. The bachelor party scene with Johnny, Reed, and Ben is kinda stupid, but it's innocent enough.
It was nothing compared to what I did at my bachelorette party. Talk about wild.
And I love the added plotline of Johnny's molecules becoming unstable after encountering the Silver Surfer, causing him to switch powers with the team every time he touches them.
Reed, you better be able to fix this.
I'm right on it.
This isn't explained really, but in my opinion, it doesn't have to be. It's funny and it's fun and it adds a layer to Johnny's character that will come in handy later. So up until this point, I've basically just talked about the things that I like about this movie. And the reason for that is because the first half is genuinely not bad. It's in the second half of the movie that all my negative comments come to the forefront.
What the hell was that?
We'll make adjustments. Next time we'll be ready.
See, the story of the movie isn't that complex. It mostly follows the traditional comic book movie franchise formula in that our heroes need to stop a world-ending event from happening while facing impossible odds. And that's all well and good, but where I see this all start to fall apart is when the movie reintroduces Victor Von Doom, played by Julian McMahon.
What's the matter? Afraid of ghosts?
Okay, so let's talk about what doesn't work for me. So Doom is alive and has found a way to track the Surfer. He kinda just walks up to him and vaguely pitches him the idea of a collab situation in which the two would work together to take over the world.
We could be unstoppable. Anything would be ours for the taking.
The Silver Surfer is not interested for even 1 second. He kinda just blasts Doom and surfs off. Doom then inexplicably gets his physical deformities reversed, and he's just back to being handsome, but still has his powers, and I hate that. I just want to know how that happened. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, but Kier, how are you okay with Johnny's power swapping thing not being explained, but when it's Doom, it's unacceptable? Well, listen, Johnny's arc in this film is that he's trying desperately to be taken seriously. This is proved by little things like him asking Reed to call him John instead of Johnny in an attempt to be seen as less childish.
John.
Huh?
Focus testing showed that Johnny skewed a little young.
But after he meets the Silver Surfer and gets the ability to swap powers with his teammates, he's deemed by Reed to be a flight risk for the crew and is kind of sidelined by the team. But there's a scene where Johnny tries to go after the Surfer and ends up getting knocked into Reed, who is stretching his limbs to save a Ferris wheel full of civilians, and it all culminates in Johnny almost killing everybody, including his sister Sue.
Stay back before you get somebody killed.
This further alienates Johnny from the family and thus adds some more depth to his character and development. But with Doom, he just gets hot again, and that's all. Nothing changes for him in any way, and the change doesn't serve the plot either. It's very annoying, and I'm tempted to say that they just didn't know what to do with the character. And also, after he gets his normal appearance back, he just strolls into the government and offers to help them save the world, and they're just gonna let him freely walk around as if he didn't almost destroy the entire city in the last movie. Like, because he doesn't look hideous anymore, he's just getting a pardon for his crimes. Get the f out of here.
I hate you. All of you.
The government forces Reed and team to work with Victor in order to track the Surfer and help take him down after they figure out that his surfboard is the source of his power. However, I do love the scene where Reed demands the military and Victor to show him and the team some respect, and he just kind of lists all the reasons why he's better than Victor. This is classic Reed Richards, and Johan Griffith truly shows that he deserves to play this character. Honestly, I think the casting is kind of perfect.
I'm one of the greatest minds of the 21st century. I'm engaged to the hottest girl on the planet.
And guess what? The team is able to capture the Silver Surfer. But then it all goes to shit once again, and we learn the Surfer's reasons for wanting to destroy the planet. So Norin, or the Silver Surfer, reveals to Sue that he's rampaging across the cosmos and destroying planets because Galactus, who by the way is not really Galactus in this movie, made him a deal that if the Surfer helps him consume other planets, he won't eat the Surfer's home planet of Zenn-La and spare his people.
My service spares my world and the one I love.
This part isn't so bad, it's kind of understandable, but then he gives some whack lines about how he wants to save Earth now because Sue reminds him of his girlfriend back home on his planet. What?
You remind me of her.
So he'll destroy countless planets in order to save his girlfriend and people, but he meets one person on Earth that reminds him of his girlfriend, and all of a sudden he's fine with joining the Fantastic Four and breaking his agreement with Galactus? Like, homie, you realize if you don't succeed in killing Galactus, you just signed a death warrant for your entire planet because some sexy invisible lady was nice to you? Sick.
Why are you destroying our planet?
I have no choice.
So, with the Surfer now under captivity and the Fantastic Four also being detained by the government, Doom inevitably betrays the army and steals the surfboard to claim the ultimate power. And actually, I don't really know what his plan is at this point. I don't think the writers did either because it's never explained.
You have to give it up!
You know, I've never been the giving type, Creed.
Hold on!
But anyway, the team escapes with the Silver Surfer and chase down Dr. Doom, and you know what that means, baby. It's final battle time.
To quote a friend of mine, it's clobbering time.
So, let's recap. The Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer are working together to save the Earth from Galactus, a giant space cloud that consumes planets to survive. Johnny's molecules are still unstable, and every time he touches one of his team members, he swaps their powers with his. And Doom is inexplicably handsome again, but still wearing the metal suit anyway, and now in possession of the magic surfboard.
Nice.
After failing to subdue Victor, Johnny ends up group hugging his homies and taking all 4 of the team's powers at one time, and I kinda love it. He can stretch, he can flame on and fly, he can become invisible and use force fields, and he also has fists made of orange rock.
The Thing. Is this dork made of orange rock like the rest of his body?
It's a superhero secret.
The logic of how this happens doesn't make a lot of sense, but come on. Of course it doesn't. And so now Johnny's movie-long struggle to become a real hero and be taken seriously is laid on heavy throughout the whole film, and it pays off by having Johnny be the only one who can save the world. I love that.
Let's not make this about me.
Johnny takes down Doom and returns the Surfer to his board and gives the team back their powers. The Silver Surfer decides that if he flies into the mouth of Galactus, he can implode him from the inside, so basically he sacrifices himself to save Earth.
I will no longer serve. This is the end.
Do I like this ending? Not really. You have to remember that the Silver Surfer is doing all of this, as in sacrificing himself to save Earth, just because he thought Sue was fine based on a 3-minute encounter with her. But if we can overlook everything else in this movie, why not add that to the list?
What'd I miss?
In conclusion, The Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer is a relatively inoffensive entry in the Marvel canon. I'd say it's better than movies like Daredevil and Elektra, and not as good as movies like Blade and the X-Men. And honestly, despite my beef with Tobey Maguire, this movie doesn't even come close to Spider-Man 2.
Getting on my nerves.
I have a knack for that.
Not anymore.
But as always, I'm only one part of this conversation, and I genuinely want to know what you guys think of this film. And yes, I'm also curious to know who you would cast as the Fantastic Four in the upcoming MCU reboot. I would love to read your thoughts. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time on Marvel Revisited. Goodbye. Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joblo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.